Good evening, Isaac's Army. Welcome to another brand new edition of the We Want Answers Show, episode 21, and we've got a very special guest lined up for tonight. I'm Big Sean. Of course, that's John, and below him is Dave. We're here for some answers, and the guy we got on tonight is really ruffling a lot of feathers across the world, and that's why we want to talk to him. He is the leader of the Conscious Resistance Network. He's Mr. Derrick Broze, but before we bring him in, he has a little mini documentary that's going to kind of give you guys, the lay of the land for what to expect tonight. So I'm going to hit that, and then we're going to bring Derrick in, and we're going to get going right away. This is going to be a busy night, and we're going to try to stuff a lot of info into a short amount of time. So let's get that doc going. Here we go.
Forum and Forbes magazine published a short essay titled, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." Written by Ida Auken, Denmark's former Minister for the Environment, the essay imagines what life might be like in 2030. The year 2030 was chosen because of its importance to the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. The SDGs are a collection of 17 interlinked objectives adopted by the UN in 2015 with the ostensible goal of ending poverty, protecting the planet, and spreading peace and prosperity to all people by 2030. However, these lofty idealistic goals actually hide darker intentions. The SDGs and Agenda 2030 are a step towards a world where individual liberty and privacy are erased, and technocratic digital surveillance and social engineering are the norm. Although the essay is nearly a decade old, most people have become aware of it and the phrase "you will own nothing and be happy" since the World Economic Forum announced the Great Reset Agenda in June 2020.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
Since that announcement, countless researchers, podcasters, and journalists have shared their concerns with the public in an attempt to avert the world described by this essay. When you get past the buzzwords and promises of utopia, you recognize that the world of 2030 described by the World Economic Forum is a world where technocrats centrally plan every aspect of society. It is a world with no privacy, no personal property ownership, with mandatory digital IDs and digital currencies, and social credit scores. The essay makes this clear when it states, quote, "Everything you considered a product has now become a service," or, quote, "In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we do not need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I'm not there." The author states that shopping has turned into choosing things to use, and sometimes she lets the algorithm do it for her because, quote, "It knows my taste better than I do by now." Finally, she laments the people who do not live in our city, those we lost on the way, referring to the people who opted out of the smart cities and social credit scores to exit the cities to build so-called self-supplying communities. What the writer fails to understand is that millions of people are already choosing to exit the cities and build outside the digital dystopia planned for 2030. Even those who cannot or will not leave the cities are beginning to question what their future holds if they remain in the tightly controlled metroplexes. While most people likely do not agree with the vision put forth by the WEF, the UN, and their cartels, we cannot deny that these institutions are working night and day to achieve their 2030 agenda. They are working with hundreds of multinational corporations, nearly every major world government, and spending trillions of dollars to manifest this great reset of society. And while millions of people have woken up to this agenda, the vast majority are still spending their time being reactive and allowing these technocrats to manipulate their emotions and actions, and thus their lives. What if, instead of exclusively being reactionary, we put all of our energy into creating our own visions for 2030? If we know we reject the technocratic Great Reset and Agenda 2030, then we must spend time getting to know exactly what we are seeking to create. Instead of "you will own nothing and be happy in 2030, perhaps we can make it "you will be thriving and you will be fulfilled in 2030. The answer completely depends on every single one of us. The future generations are depending on us to build an alternative to the technocratic vision. Here's one alternative vision to the world of 2030. Welcome to 2030. I own land, live among like-minded people, and life has never been better. Welcome to my home. I own a couple of acres in an intentional community 1 hour outside of a major city. I live in a hempcrete home with my family and our pets. Together we live among dozens of other families and individuals who decided to get out of the concrete jungle and head for greener pastures. Every family owns their own land and their own home. The founders of our community bought the land and began recruiting members in the late 2010s as the surveillance grids became more obvious. Our community has built our own homes, roads, a network of trails, and a community center where we host educational workshops to teach others how to become independent from the grid. Speaking of the grid, some of our neighbors have been experimenting with free energy devices, while others are focused on solar and hydroelectric power. We are determined to be energy independent, especially after some governments began disconnecting the unvaccinated from the electric grid in 2026. Once food prices and inflation began to rise in 2025, we realized we needed to cut our dependence on the grocery stores. Most of the corporate stores require a digital ID to enter anyways, and our community members have opted out of that system. All of our homes are nestled within food forests producing fruits from around the world. The hundreds of trees we have planted the last few years shield our homes from the elements and allow for privacy. As you walk down the pathways, you also see many permaculture gardens producing veggies and herbs for cooking and medicine. Free-range kids are running in every direction, laughing and playing in the sun. The best part of our lives now is that we are not alone. We are one of thousands of communities which form an international network outside of the big cities and control grid. Our community is surrounded by several other like-minded communities, each with their own governance models, traditions, and norms. We often trade goods and services with our local neighbors, and some communities have begun establishing long-distance trade networks. Thankfully, in the late 2010s, a handful of forward-thinking individuals began establishing local freedom cells and circles, helping people network and find the community they were looking for. These groups laid the foundation for a movement which saw millions of people exiting from the grid and disobeying authoritarian mandates. Those cells eventually morphed into intentional communities and eco-villages united by respect for self-ownership and bodily autonomy. Together they form a decentralized network of networks which gives the people an option outside of the smart cities. They live different kinds of lives inside the city. While we chose to exit the cities, some folks stayed behind, convinced they could disrupt the move towards a technocratic police state. And in some cases, they were correct. The digital IDs were defeated, the authoritarian control removed, and human liberty flourishes, even in the concrete jungle. We've even partnered with some of the cities to help them implement permaculture operations to make the cities more food independent. In other cases, the agenda has continued to move forward, but the resistance grows every day. The ruling class underestimated the tenacity of the human spirit. As long as there is life, there is hope. This vision is my simple attempt at outlining what 2030 could be like. I call it Liberation 2030, and I work every day to help others see the importance of envisioning this future. Maybe your vision is slightly different. Whatever it is, write it down, see it in your mind, and do what you can to bring it to reality. Let's reject Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset, and let's build the People's Reset.
Well, if that doesn't get you fired up, nothing will. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show the man behind the mini doc we just watched, and I'm sure everybody just enjoyed. Please welcome to the show for the first time, Mr. Derrick Broze. Welcome aboard, my man.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, Derrick.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for playing the doc.
Good,
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
Take it, Dave. Take it, Dave.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on, Derrick. Your work, I probably saw it around like 2020 is when I discovered you. I know you've been at it way longer than that. You're one of the OGs of this movement, so it really is a pleasure to have you on and pick your brain on a whole bunch of different topics here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for all the work you guys are doing as well.
Yeah, man, we're just trying to platform people like you, like yourself, and try and get the word out there of, what can be done about this dystopian future that we're kind of headed towards.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me here and for all the work you guys are doing. Happy to talk about whatever you guys like. Sounds like it's going to be a fun convo.
Awesome, man. How did you get rolling with all this? When did you exactly start like digging deep into all these different controversial topics?
Yeah. So as you said, I've been doing this for, I think this year will be going into 2026 will be the beginning of the 17th year that I've been researching and investigating. I started waking up in late 2009. It's funny because I'm in my office right now, and I have my keyboard, some of my music equipment over here, and I have a sticker there on one of my keyboards that somebody randomly gave me at like a music festival in Houston, Texas, where I'm originally from, and it was just a sticker that said 9/11 was an inside job on it, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, that's edgy, whatever, I'll take it home, and I put it on my keyboard and didn't really think about it for another couple months, and then eventually I was like, let me look up where does that come from, and of course, there was an InfoWars website on it, and I'm not really a huge fan of Jones these days, but he definitely played a role in my early, kind of questioning of things. And
sure.
yeah,
that's kind of how we look at him right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not the Alex Jones he was back in 2010, 2011. But yeah, I mean, it was things like that, like somebody passing me, just as simple as that, passing me a bumper sticker about 9/11. I watched Alex Jones's Endgame late 2009. I read Ron Paul's book, Revolution Manifesto, just different things like that. I've always been big into metal and punk music, and I was listening to this metal band called Molotov Solution that was literally like growling about the Federal Reserve and other things that I was reading. Also a book, Rule by Secrecy by author who's now deceased, Jim Marrs, a journalist, researcher. Just all those kind of things started to kind of come into my awareness late 2009. And then by 2010, I started an activist group called the Houston Freethinkers that was kind of like, we're going to talk about 9/11. We're going to talk about any sort of controversial conspiracy, whatever is on our mind, but also had a very much focus on local action, like not just being somebody posting on Facebook at the time, but also like going out and passing out flyers, passing out at that time DVDs. We'd burn a shitload of DVDs and we'd pass out 9/11 documentaries. We'd pass out stuff about Monsanto or whatever it was, the Federal Reserve, and we just would really try to get out there and connect to people. And so that all kind of started 2009, 2010. And then by 2012, 2013, I started taking it a bit more serious because, the Freethinkers, we started to grow quite a bit. I was on Alex Jones' show 3 times back in 2011 and 2012. We started to make the local news for different things were happening. Like one incident, we had the local police showed up to we used to put together these music/art community festivals, and we would use them as a way of like, hey, let's bring everybody here and give them a bunch of free booze and music. And at the same time, we'll pass out flyers about all of our conspiracies and try to like subtly, red pill people, as they say. And one time, one of our big events, these cops showed up like 10 cars deep. They claimed that there was a noise complaint. And long story short, they ended up arresting me and pulling a shotgun out on like a crowd of 100 unarmed people. I just cocked it, pointed at everybody, and we got it all on video. And the next day when I got out of jail for refusing to obey a lawful order from an officer, we collected all the videos. We sent out a press release, and within a couple of hours, all the local media was at my house interviewing me. And it actually became like a big story where the police, they said, we're going to investigate it. And in the end, they said they did nothing wrong, but all the media showed up to my house and was very friendly. And they said, hey, we heard about what happened to you guys. We just want to talk to you, want to give you a chance to share your story. And then later that night in the evening news and the next day, whenever they wrote their articles, they had headlines like local group of conspiracy theorists surround Houston police, and totally, spun it and turned it into something crazy. And that was kind of one of the first things of like, oh, okay, I already know the media's BS, but that was like a first direct experience, of it. Like, okay. And then I just kind of started taking the journalism side a little bit more seriously, got lucky connecting with other people, writing just for blogs. And now it's a full-time gig. I run the Conscious Resistance, as you guys said earlier. I write and contribute to The Last American Vagabond. That's where I get paid to do articles. I do documentary work like the one you just showed. I've written a few books. I do public speaking. I get invited to speak at events around the world. And yeah, so I mean, it went from being like, I'm just a conspiracy theorists running around the streets yelling at people, holding signs and stuff like that, to this become my full-time gig. And over the years, I feel like I've tried to perfect it. I will add just one more thing to that story there is that, that was in 2009 when I started to wake up in terms of politics and conspiracies. But a lot of my work also does have a little bit of a spiritual element to it. And I like to tell people that while I sort of woke up politically in 2009, I feel like the first awakening that I went through was in 2005, actually 20 years ago, just a couple of weeks ago, November 2005. I got arrested and I went to prison at 20 years old. I had been addicted to crystal meth and a bunch of drugs that whole year of 2005, pretty much right after high school, went right into drinking and doing too many drugs and partying, and eventually it kind of consumed me because I'm kind of, anything I do, I pretty much go all in, including using drugs. I went all in, and it was not a good thing. And eventually I was able to pull myself out of that, but I was still kind of in that world of selling drugs. And so I got arrested November 2005. And between November 2005 and October 2008, I was in and out of Texas state jails and prisons. I ended up doing 19 months behind bars, and I became a felon. And so when I got out in October 2008, Obama was getting elected a few weeks later. I'm a felon now, and I'm sort of like having to navigate that world of not being able to get a job at different places, not being able to rent at different places, and also having the experience of like, I was in prison for drugs, and I didn't really know, I didn't know anything about the history of the drug war, any of these kind of things I know about now. But as a felon, I started going to the library all the time, just applying for jobs. And then sooner or later, I decided, you know what, why don't I check out one of these books? Like as I kind of got sober, and a lot of the depression I'd been dealing with kind of lifted, I also rediscovered my own intelligence, my own thirst and curiosity for understanding the world. And so the first book I read after getting out of prison was called Cannabis: A History. And it's all about the history of the drug war and sort of the reasons for the original drug laws, like coming from the oil industry and trying to drive out the hemp industry, and just a whole bunch of stuff that I'd never learned about. And so it was really that alone that kind of planted the seed that, maybe there's things about the world that I haven't, learned. And then shortly after, like I said, I got this 9/11 sticker. I read Ron Paul. I read some other books, listened to Alex Jones. And then it was, here I am from there.
Yeah, everybody has that awakening point. For me, it was in 2015 when I started to realize that things weren't what I had originally thought they were. And I don't know, I just, a lot of the work I've seen you do, you delve really deep into all the reasons behind the Great Reset, and all the stuff that comes along with the World Economic Forum's theory on life. Why don't you give people some insight into where your research began, and kind of like hit the biggest tenets, like make the people who are watching this who haven't heard any of this understand in the simplest terms possible what this is all about.
Sure. I mean, obviously there's many facets to this, and I've tried to tackle them with my 17-part documentary series called The Pyramid of Power, which people can watch for free at thepyramidofpower.net. But I think that one simple way to kind of boil it down would be that we're dealing with a eugenics agenda, which is a very much an anti-human agenda by people like the World Economic Forum and other roundtable groups, sort of foundation groups, which are more like the front people for these issues. They are not the top of the pyramid by any measure. I mean, they're important in terms of spreading propaganda, but they're not the top at all. And for anybody who is kind of at the beginning of this whole journey or just wants to learn more details on that, I will recommend the book I mentioned a couple moments ago, Rule by Secrecy, which is, you got the Pyramid of Power. Click that enter button. I want you guys to see this is a brand new website we just finished. It's not optimized for mobile yet, so if anybody looks on their phones, it's not going to look as sleek. But if you click that,
I did
you got this
click
beautiful
it.
3D pyramid there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so that each of those levels is a different chapter of the series, and it kind of has a little preview video there you can see. You can mute the music and the sound if you want. But yeah, we've been working on that. But so I'm really just like all of us, I'm kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? All the people who've come before us who have been doing this research for decades. And I would include Jim Marrs. I'll mention his book again, Rule by Secrecy. He has another one called Rise of the Fourth Reich. He died in 2016, I think 2017. So he's no longer with us, but he was originally known for his research into JFK and with his book Crossfire, which eventually became a movie about JFK. I think those are great starting resources. I will, of course, toot my own horn and say, watch The Pyramid of Power. And if you don't want to watch it, read the transcripts. And we're actually working on a book version right now that's going to be out by the end of this month. And, like I said, it's in a eugenics agenda. And I remember kind of early in my work, as I would hear people say that these people are anti-human, they want to kill us. I kind of thought it was a little bit of a hyperbole, and I've never felt until maybe the last couple of years comfortable saying that. I know on the internet people say all kinds of things, but for me, sure, as somebody who does consider myself truly an independent journalist, and I try to take the best of journalism and journalistic ethics and then throw out all the garbage that we see in the mainstream, I take my words very seriously. So anything that you see with my name, whether it's an article, a documentary, a book, etc., I stand by the facts in it. I can sit there and debate them and point to my resources and everything. So the pyramid has all of the links to everything that we talk about in there. But with that said, I've kind of been hesitant over the years to really admit, or I guess acknowledge, or let's say it took me a little while to get to that point to confidently say, like, no, these people definitely want to kill us. Like, there's definitely a eugenics element to this. And I think it becomes very, very difficult to ignore that the longer you spend time going down these rabbit holes. So I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And of course, the goal of the Pyramid of Power was to try to outline, well, if that's true, like if there's really this institution or these organizations that interlock and work together, as many people claim, that are attempting to control the world, well, what are the pieces of that pyramid? And so we start really simple at the education system, the mainstream media, big tech, and then it gets kind of progressively deeper, progressively more complex as it goes along. And also, I will say with that series, the whole goal was to make it to be for the Netflix generation, very bingeable. So I think 10 of them, the first 10 are all 30 minutes or less. The more recent ones are a little bit longer, 35, 40, 45 minutes long. But the idea originally was, let's make a series that's 30 minutes or less that takes the best available research out there from books, from documentaries, as well as my own original research, combine that together, and then end every episode with, here's a few suggested solutions. Here's some ideas you might want to try to avoid these systems or to fight back against them and stuff like that. And so the entire series is there. It's available for free, 16 episodes. The 17th episode is aimed at answering the question, who is at the top? We have released volume 1 of chapter 17. And then the final episode, if everything goes well, fingers crossed, will be out in the next couple weeks. I've literally been talking with my editor today, and we're like working on all the final touches and pieces of it. But yeah, I wanted to
Derrick, aren't you still looking for some elements for that episode to be crowdsourced? Now would be a good time to tell all the people what you're looking for who are watching.
Thank you for that, Shad. I appreciate it. Well, if you want to go to theconsciousresistance.com/crowdsource, that's the best place for people to find out more about that. So yes, as you mentioned there, so we're finishing the final episode, 17 volume 2, which is about an hour and 40 minutes long. And my editor's been noticing, as you guys know, I mean, the internet, it gets scrubbed, things get harder to find. You might find one video one day and then it's lost, or you have to go to really obscure websites. Maybe you can find that on Rumble, maybe you can find it on BitChute, but a lot of times these things get scrubbed. So what we put together is just a short list of the different scenes and some of the images he's looking for. And I actually need to update. There might be some that we've gotten, because we have been, since I announced this, we've been getting lots of emails. So thank you to everybody who has already contributed. But if you're interested in helping us potentially bring the series to a close even faster, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com/crowdsource, all one word. And you'll see this list that we're looking at here. And it's just a few different kind of specific points we're looking for. Some are going to be easier to find than others. And yeah, you can just email the email that's listed on that page and just put the scene, like scene 192, images of Adam Weishaupt. And you don't have to download or anything. If you found a link or a video or whatever, just send that to us and we'll take care of it. And it's been kind of cool. People have been helping out with that. And yeah, I'm so excited to share this final episode. I watched the first draft yesterday. And I think it's going to be a very fitting conclusion to this series. I've been working on this documentary series for 5 years now. And I haven't been paid a dime for it. It's just a labor of love. I want to get this information out. I want it to be free and accessible for people. And now that it's coming to a close, we're working on the book version of it. And then we're going to start making DVDs and USB drives, and those will be available for sale. And I'll just add one more point to that. The coolest thing about making this documentary, though, out of all of this, dudes, is that I had more than, I would say, 5 to 10 families reach out to me and tell me that they've used it to homeschool their kids, that they've literally had their kids watch episode number 5
That's
and
nuts.
do a report on it or something like that, which is really cool, because I mean, that wasn't my intention, but yeah, I mean, if that, of course, planting seeds in the minds of the younger generations is part of this. Honestly, I mentioned I watched Endgame when I was kind of waking up from Alex Jones. I think that documentary, it's interesting, but it's not a documentary I would recommend to people, because I think it largely plays on some of the things that we try to avoid in the Pyramid of Power. Number one being very kind of gloom and doom music, Endgame, blueprint for global enslavement. It's factual in there, but it's not the kind of thing that it gives you kind of bad feelings, and it can be kind of creepy, and that turns off a lot of people. Maybe for some of us, that's the kind of thing we like. But I think for let's say a more normie person that you're just trying to wake up, that's not going to be attractive to them. That's not the sort of thing that's going to reach them.
No,
but
they'll just shut it
Pyramid of
off.
Power, Exactly. They're going to be like, what the hell is this crazy guy saying? Even if it's true because of the format. And, the truth is the truth regardless. But still, for me, because I care about my goal as an activist is always waking people up. Like some people I think have given up. They're like, whatever, screw it. People are going to die. I don't care about them. I guess there's still a part of me that's like, no, there's the mass awakening needs to happen. We need more people to wake up, more people questioning things. And so I take that into consideration. So when I made the series, I very much made it in mind of like, it's not a conspiracy documentary. In fact, I call it a true crime documentary because everything inside of it is fact-based, it's sourced, it's documented. And, we do have background music in there, but we purposely didn't choose music or tones or sort of the way that I narrate it because I did all the research, the writing of the scripts and the narration. We did it in a way that it's going to just be informative and educational, and it's not going to be like, oh my God, this is too intense. Like I can't handle this, because I want people to watch it. I don't want people to be turned off simply because the soundtrack's creepy or something like that. So
you got hope, you got solutions in there.
Exactly.
As
and every episode has
the doom
solutions.
and gloom. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is huge. Because nowadays, like if you don't, you're either a black pill, red pill, and not many people are coming up with these solutions. And that's a really important thing to talk about, because what's the point if we're going to talk about all these negative things and not have anything to come back with it?
Exactly. And, I kind of feel like I made the type of documentary series that I wish my younger self had found, because I don't know if you guys can relate to this or not, but some of, when we first start waking up, I think there's a tendency, especially with the age that we're living in now, because there's so much information out. But when I was waking up in 2009, 2010, which is not that long ago, there was a lot of stuff out there, but not nearly to the degree. We didn't have this huge, alternative media space. There was some of us out there, and there were some websites that I was following, but it wasn't, as big as it is now. And so, you're consuming all this content, you're looking for truth, and you find some things that are more, quality than others. You come across all kinds of videos and content. And I definitely, looking back, I can see that there were certain things that I was watching or that I was consuming and then believing that now I'm like, actually, I don't think that was exactly right. Like there's a little bit of truth in there, but then there's maybe some speculation or some assumptions. And especially when it comes to people like Alex Jones, where they'll be like, here's the truth. And he's talking about the truth, but then he's also adding layers of his own opinion, or he's kind of making some logical leaps and stuff like that. And he's not the only one. I'm just using him as an example. But so for me, writing the Pyramid of Power, it was really cool, because especially these final episodes, which go really deep of trying to answer who's at the top. I went back and read all the old books that I bought in the beginning, and I got a whole bunch of new books and kind of compared that. And there are definitely areas where I'm like, okay, you know what? I think there's something here, but I don't think it's as easy to claim 100% this is a fact as some people might like it to believe. And for me, I think that's okay. Like, I think we should be able to admit we don't know. We can't claim, we don't know for certain. We have this feeling, we can point in this direction, we can see these facts, but we don't know 100%. Like, for example, I don't know for 100% that Alex Jones is a CIA agent,
continue for
but I
the
sure
next
have some
1500
feelings.
years with the rise of
I sure
Islam
have some,
and the teachings of
some
Muhammad.
thoughts about that.
In the 7th
So I think
century,
that's
Muslims
an
began invading
important
various
aspect of
nations
this.
in North Africa,
It's
the
for us
Middle
to be
East,
able to just
and
be
parts of
honest
Europe as
about
they
our
sought to
research
spread the
and continue to update our knowledge base as well.
Oh wow, these are
For
well
sure.
done. Nice.
Yeah, I watched a bunch of these leading up to today once I knew you were coming on, and yeah, like John said, they are extremely well done. And we all know the basis of the reset. We all know why, like, the powers that be need to see this reset go through. It's obviously the failing of the fiat system, and it's getting to a boiling point where they can't hide it anymore. And I saw something pop up earlier today that I'd like to ask you about, and I want to see what your feelings are on this. I'm going to share it. I'll let you see it, and then I'd like you to react. Did you see a record was set today for the biggest debt buyback in U.S. Treasury history, $12 billion to be exact? What are your feelings on that?
I mean, no, I did not see that. Thanks for the update. And my feelings are not surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're setting a new debt record every other day, every other week, because just the direction things are headed in. I mean, this is, as you rightfully point out, I mean, there is a financial collapse, some would say a controlled demolition being done on purpose, of course, to bring in the system that they want. I definitely think that's a big element of that, is to keep us in an unsustainable system so that it becomes easier, especially as the masses are dependent on that unsustainable system, you break down that system. It makes it very easy to introduce a new system if people are literally begging for something to save them from the the calamity that you created in the first place.
Yeah, and it's crazy times too. I think things are really coming to a head. Like I saw another article today that 25% of credit applications are getting rejected. Like the banks are choking for oxygen. And the controlled demolition thing you brought up, it sure makes a lot of sense. If a lot of these institutions go away and we're to a point where, people's poverty level isn't saying I can't afford to eat out or I can't go on vacation, when people are literally in food lines again like they were in the Great Depression, it's a perfect time. You trick people with massive amounts of fear and real wonder of how they're going to get to the next day. And that's how you sneak this stuff in. And that's entirely what they're doing right now.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, it's something that we've seen happen before over generations of what I call the predator class, the people at the top, whatever name you want to give them, the people who've been driving this generations long conspiracy, just trying to consolidate power by crashing systems and then reconsolidating that power. Obviously, a recent example, 2008, 2009 financial crisis, crashing of that system, big banks buying up other banks, and just gets a little more consolidated. That's the direction that the world is headed in all industries. We could talk about the consolidation of the media that we're seeing happen under some of the Zionist technocrats right now, like the Ellisons. We've been seeing it, as I mentioned, in the banking industry, and it seems to be happening in nearly every industry, just less and less companies, less and less competition. And that is, of course, by design, because they want as much control and they want as little choices for us, the free people, as possible.
For sure. And that's how the damage is done, one day at a time. People, out of need, people submit to things they should have never submitted to begin with. And then you get into a situation where, as you submit one thing at a time, one small thing at a time, it's like a snowball going down a hill. It's going to grow, it's going to grow, it's going to grow. And when people finally wake up, that's when it's too late. That's when, as Klaus Schwab says, you own nothing and you're allegedly going to be happy. And that's why I think the things you're doing are most important right now, and so important right now, because you're waking people up. You're presenting cold, hard facts. And like we said earlier tonight, you're not just presenting these cold, hard facts. You're giving solutions and hope at the same time. And elaborate even further on that.
Sure.
What would you recommend first steps people take right now with this impending financial crash? What should the average person do to kind of, in a way, shield themselves from this destruction that's coming?
Sure, absolutely. And I just want to acknowledge, I see over here, there was a comment from Rob Padley on X. I moved 8 hours from the city on 2 acres with 6 greenhouses and pioneer wood cook stove and get my meat from the forest. This dude's doing it right. Like this, he's already doing it. So much of what I advocate in terms of solutions, I have come to call exit and build. I write about it in my 2020 book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. I'll just show it here real quick. Everybody can download this book for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. And there's a free audiobook there as well. But if you want to pick up a physical copy, you can. And I originally wrote this book in late 2019 and published it January 2020, right before we heard of this crazy thing called COVID-1984. And then I updated it in late 2022 based on what we'd seen those first couple of years of COVID. And what I talk about in this book is, of course, the rise of the technocratic state, the history of the technocratic movement, the way that digital IDs, CBDCs, all the things that so many people are more familiar with, which if you just think about 5 years ago, there weren't so many people talking about this, and thankfully there are now. The book is kind of part like history, like what is technocracy? What is the history of that movement? It's also, of course, part call to action. And as the title implies with how to, it's also kind of a guide. I have, for the most part of my life, lived as much out of these systems as possible. And I don't have any in the book or tonight, any sort of, here's the 5 steps you need to do and solve all your problems. Pay me $5.99 a month and we'll fix the world order. I think that anybody selling you that kind of thing is full of it. But I do have some ideas, and I will preface this by saying that they're not easy. They're challenging. They might involve lifestyle changes. They might involve relationship changes. They might involve change. They definitely will involve changing your habits depending on the lifestyle you live. But I haven't used a bank since 2008. I don't talk to certain government agencies. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a driver's license. I'm not a sovereign citizen or state national or any kind of like advocate for any of those sort of things. I have my own views and opinions on that. I just literally try to live as free as possible, and just kind of by my own nature of being mistrusting of these systems, I sort of ended up not using banks at a young age. And then, as I mentioned, starting to wake up in 2009, 2010, I kind of just never looked back. I said, well, now that I'm adult and I've gotten this far, and now that I'm waking up and realizing what the Federal Reserve Bank is and realizing what the fractional reserve central banking system is all about, maybe I don't want to participate. And then, of course, 2008, 2009, like I mentioned, we saw all these banks rob the American people blind. And I'm
too big to fail. Too big to fail.
Too big to fail. So they bailed them out with our money, right? With the taxpayers' money, at least, right? For those who are paying taxes. I'm a big believer that we should actually practice the principles and the things we believe in. And what I mean by that is, if I have a problem with JP Morgan Chase laundering money for Jeffrey Epstein, I probably shouldn't give them my money. If I don't like that Wells Fargo and Bank of America and these other banks were robbing the people, then I probably shouldn't go deposit my check in there every week, because it's like, I'm giving the criminals who I am opposed to and who I don't align with, I'm giving them my money to use, and I'm supporting them. And so I'm very much a big believer in this idea of voting with your dollar, but instead of just thinking about it in terms of like, oh, where you buy your food from or what businesses you support, which I do believe in, you think about this kind of in a holistic manner, like trying to think about it in as many different areas of your life as possible. So in How to Opt Out the Technocratic State, I talk about this exit and build strategy. And exit and build is essentially that when you see a system that does not align with your values, whether that's the banking system, whether that's the digital IDs, CBDCs, all these sort of things, take steps to exit from those systems, and then when possible, build new systems or support those who are building new systems. And again, the website, if anybody wants to download it, is theconsciousresistance.com/how-to, just all one word, how-to, and you can get yourself a copy. And so when I approach all of these different systems, and like I did in the Pyramid of Power, if you watch it, you'll hear the solutions. It's very much kind of around this exit and build idea. Okay, well, we don't like the education system. Well, if you're a parent and you have the opportunity, homeschool your kids, or, there's unschooling, there's world schooling, there's all sorts of alternative, quote unquote, alternative models of educating your children. If you can't afford to do that, which is understandable in our world with everything you just covered a moment ago about the debt, there's a lot of people struggling. The idea of homeschooling their kid or paying for a tutor is kind of difficult. There's different steps you can take, though. In each of these areas, there are steps, both simple and others a bit more challenging, that you can take. And so I kind of call that a holistic self-assessment. Like, start with what I focus on is food, money, big tech, like technology. Those are three areas that everybody could start taking steps now. And of course, it's not that you're going to go from like where I'm at to where you are now. Let's say that somebody listening to this is like, Derrick, I got $20,000 of student loan debt. I got credit card debt. All my money's tied up in the bank right now. You're not going to go from that to being completely unbanked, using private currencies, alternative currencies, whatever, overnight. There's a process that takes place. And that's what I describe in the book, is like, how do you go from where you are now to a place that's more free in terms of privacy and liberty? Well, the first step is you need to know where you're trying to get, right? So that's kind of one thing, is take an assessment of where you are now. And okay, if you're very plugged into the matrix, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. That's where you are now. But then also think about, where would you like to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years, et cetera, and really kind of map that out. That's what Liberation 2030, my mini documentary earlier, was about, like thinking about these things. If we understand we don't want their 2030, then we need to start thinking about what 2030 and beyond we want. We're about to go into 2026 right now, so time is of the essence. But start thinking about where it is that you want to go when it comes to your food supply, your money, the big tech digital system. And so you have a goal, you can kind of see it in the future, and then you need to come up with a process of, okay, what are the steps that I need to take to get from point A to point B? And that's essentially what I describe in my book. And I've also got another link I can mention. I put out a free 45-day exit and build challenge. It's at theconsciousresistance.com/EXB for exit and build, just the letters EXB. Anybody who's curious, you can go there and you'll see it's just like a simple it's meant to be taken like over 7 weeks. So you do one topic per week, and I go through and describe, here's the problems, here's some of the solutions, and I give a little bit of homework. Try these things, look into these areas. And I don't claim that this is going to solve all of our problems 100%. or that it's going to stop the technocracy. Because, I mean, to be frank, I'm not 100% sure that we can stop it. For one reason or another, there doesn't seem to be much resistance. You know, when I go fly, as one example, when I go fly at the airport, I'm the only person opting out of the facial recognition. Everybody else is just voluntarily going through it. Part of it is because they don't know, because of course the government's not making it clear to them they have options. But just as an example, like, I don't think there's a lot of resistance. There's people like us who know what's going on and who are talking about it. But I'm very much a believer that we need to start moving beyond just being awake and, you know, to what I call activated, like actually actively working on the liberation of ourselves, our families, our communities, and eventually of humanity. And that's not going to happen by just watching podcasts and documentaries all the time and just talking about it on the internet. That's a part of the puzzle. I do it too. But at some point, we got to say, okay, what am I actually going to do for myself? Because I could just sit here and talk all day about technocracy and the police state every day on Twitter and on Rumble and everywhere else. But sooner or later, if I don't actually do anything to either resist this system, to oppose it, or to opt out of it and to be as free from it as possible, I'm going to be subsumed by it. It's just a matter of fact. Like, it's going to come to your front door sooner or later, unless we find ways to try to work around these systems. And so I will give a couple of tips, though, because you said something that people could do right now when it comes to digital technology, which is, of course, something that we all use every single day. And it's also one of the most challenging, and it's one of the most easy ways to kind of work around these systems. It's challenging and it's easy because sometimes people are lazy and we're stuck to our digital devices. But what I would say is that there's a couple of websites people can look up as resources. I have a lot of resources, so I'm just throwing out more names for anybody who wants to follow along. There's a website, privacytools.io, privacytools.io. Another one is called libertytools.io. And then a third one would be takebackourtech.org, which is a buddy of mine, his website, and he's got a lot of different guides. And what these websites, particularly privacytools.io, are going to do is you're going to see operating systems, and then they'll list out different operating systems. So, for example, I'm talking to you guys right now on a Linux laptop. I'm not on Microsoft. I'm not on Google. I'm not on Apple, right? And it goes through emails. There you go. VPNs, instant messaging, all kinds of stuff. I'm not here to endorse any of them. Do your own research, see what works best for you. But the point is that there are alternatives for all these things. You're not going to find them if you go to the local Best Buy or Target or electronics store. All you're going to see is Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to go out of your way to try to find devices and tools that are alternative to these systems. But they do exist. And the thing is, again, if you're going to exit, let's say in this case, we're exiting from the big tech platforms and operating systems and browsers and messengers and search engines and stuff like that, and then we want to build new alternatives. Well, I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a technologist. I'm not a software developer. So in the case that you're not going to be the one to code it and to build it yourself, then I think we need to support those who are building the alternatives. So I kind of use my position as a researcher, as an activist, to highlight these other tools. Like, hey, I can't build the alternative search engine. I can't build the privacy phone, but I know people who are building them, and I know people who are, working on those projects, and I want to support them as much as possible, because as with any other project out there, if it doesn't have support, including financial support, or even just eyeballs and people watching and paying attention and being aware of it, sooner or later, those people have to quit those projects and they have to go back to their day jobs. And I've seen it happen too many times where there are good projects, whether we're talking about technology or otherwise, and they just don't have the support to keep going. And so, again, you can exit from these systems and then build new ones. But if you can't build it, if you're not going to be the builder of the new browser, the new laptop or whatever, then support those who are building those systems. So you could, everybody hearing this right now, or whenever you're hearing this, you could go to Privacy Tools, you could go to Liberty Tools, you could go Take Back Our Tech, you could spend some time looking at those resources, and you could decide right now, you know what, I'm going to get off Gmail. I'm going to get off whatever your mainstream browser is, Edge or Google, Chrome, whatever. You could start switching to, like I'm talking to you guys on LibreWolf right now, which is a privacy version of Firefox. There's tools for everything that we're doing. Like, I don't use Google for any kind of documents. People use that for sheets, for work and stuff like that. I use cryptpad.fr. That has documents and sheets and all the stuff that you're used to using, but it's a privacy version. It's a decentralized version. And so the point here is that there are ways to do the things we want to do, but there are better companies that we could support, instead of just saying, well, let's talk about the machine and the problems that we see while we're using the tools of the people building the machines, right? There's kind of a disconnect there.
Now, do you find, I don't know, I dropped out there for a minute,
Oh,
some technical difficulties.
Time out. Time out.
What's up?
I don't know if you just saw what happened on the screen. Good old McAfee said CryptPad was a suspicious website.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, a lot
I
of the
wonder
mainstream.
why. I wonder why. No,
They
sorry,
don't want
Dave,
you
go
using
ahead.
privacy versions.
So, I don't know if you guys talked about it when I had to drop out for a second, but cryptocurrency, is there any place for it? Is it the total mark of the beast type, bringing, is it the opposite of what we want, or are these privacy coins actually something worthwhile?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Dave. So I'll share my thoughts on that. Short answer, I think there is a place. Long answer, I've been involved in the Bitcoin space since 2013. At first as a journalist, because again, as somebody who doesn't talk to the IRS and has been talking about building parallel alternative systems since 2011, like starting with the End the Fed movement, right? That kind of came out from Ron Paul and let's bring down the Fed. And a lot of people at that time were saying, well, look, if we're going to be against the Fed, then we have to find ways to not use the Federal Reserve notes, AKA dollars. And at that time, 2011, the best tool we had was silver and gold, precious metals. I knew people who would print like little gold bucks. I have some here in my room. People would have silver coins and say, okay, what if we start getting more and more local businesses to accept silver coins, and then we could pay with silver instead of having to use the Federal Reserve notes? And I'm definitely a supporter of alternative currencies, barter, these sorts of things. I think we should use anything we can. And then around 2012, 2013, I started hearing about this thing called Bitcoin. So I started going to some Bitcoin conferences and interviewing people and just really trying to learn about it. And then I got my first Bitcoin transaction in 2013. I got paid for some journalism. I did not end up saving any of the Bitcoins from back in 2013. But I started to kind of learn it and use it. And I was coming from, and at that time, there was a lot of people who very much saw it as a real threat to the Federal Reserve System. Like, hey, maybe this could be non-government, non-bank money, and we could defeat the whole system if we have our own freedom money, right? That was kind of the idea, and there was definitely this freedom mindset behind it. Now, as the years have gone on, as I'm sure you guys are aware, Bitcoin has definitely been hijacked and co-opted, and there's people affiliated with the foundations of Bitcoin and some of the major players who have ties to the Bilderberg Group and all sorts of shady people. I don't really, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi or somebody who thinks it's like the best thing since sliced bread or anything like that. I think it's been completely co-opted and hijacked it. And it went from being, this could be a real currency. In fact, I'll tell you that in 2017, 2018, I did 2 US tours. I was speaking all around the US, and I had Bitcoin with me, and I was going everywhere I was going. I was giving people $5 of Bitcoin. Hey, sign up. If you have a business, say that you'll accept Bitcoin. And the idea was, if enough people adopt this, maybe we'll have a money that's different from government money, alternative to government money. Now, again, as time has gone on, I've sort of lost any faith in Bitcoin being this. It's become completely co-opted, especially with all the crypto and stable coins that we see in the Trump administration. But I do believe that there is a place for private digital money, and specifically for cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency is different than just digital money, because the cryptography, it does imply cryptography, but implies privacy and certain elements that still do exist. Although they don't exist in Bitcoin, there are projects like Monero and Zeno, which I do believe are actually, and I use these all the time. I mean, I live in Mexico now, and one of the cool things about being here in Mexico is one of the few places where I have certain contacts in the counter economy where if I want to say I need some pesos, I might sell some of my Monero, and I have a guy I can reach out to and say, hey, can I sell you X amount of Monero? And then he will send me these ATM codes. And Mexico is the only country I've seen this happen, where you can go to the ATM. You don't need a bank account, don't need to show ID, don't need to talk to anybody. You just go to the ATM and it says cash without card. You hit that and you put in a 10-digit code. So whenever I want to sell some Monero, for example, I reach out to this dude. I send him the agreed amount of Monero. We agree on the amount of pesos I'm going to get. He sends me this 10-digit code. I go to the ATM, put in the code, boom, I get my cash. There's no bank involved. There's no government involved other than, the ATM itself. And so I'm definitely still somebody who believes it as a tool. I'm not like, again, a crypto maxi that's like crypto is going to save the entire world. One of the things I talk about in this book is that we need to be adaptable. We need to be flexible, because we are in a very rapidly changing landscape, and there might be some tools like crypto that might work for a little while, and then later on they don't work. One example was before I was doing direct exchange with this gentleman that I just mentioned, I was using a website called localmonero.co. And in fact, I think it's in this book. I talk about Local Monero. But then after I published the second edition, as of last year, Local Monero was shut down. and numerous different Monero affiliated websites and wallets. Some shut down because of governments came after them. Others voluntarily shut down because they're afraid of the government coming after them. And this is because the US government, they have put out a bounty on anybody who can help crack Monero's encryption. And again, I'm not a coder. I'm not in the team or anything like that. So I'm not shilling for any project because I'm getting paid. These are just things that I use. There are projects like Zano, which claim to have improved on Monero and other ways. The point is, the governments absolutely seem to be afraid that people like us are going to be able to transact privately without them knowing about it. And so they went after the founders of the Samurai wallet. Samurai wallet was a crypto wallet that was completely private, and it allowed you to exchange, swap cryptos from one for the other within the wallet. They call that money laundering. But for us, we call it freedom. I'm just a free person exchanging from one coin to the other. How is it any other business, right? But they literally arrested the founders of Tornado Cash, which is another similar service. They arrested the founders of the Samurai wallet. They went after Roger Ver. They are definitely going after people who are trying to promote these types of privacy tools. So I do believe in them, but again, like I said, that doesn't mean like hold on till the very end. Like if something changes or it becomes compromised, jump to the next thing if there's an opportunity. Because I think the more rigid we are, the more difficult it's going to be able to thrive in the face of this growing technocratic state.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. Because right now the sentiment is like you're either with it or against it, and yeah, I definitely see some use case in it, like you do. But yeah, it can be compromised.
You don't have to be hardline.
We haven't seen it compromised.
You don't need to be hardline against it or before. I think some people get too black and white about it, right? We need to be like, because especially in the crypto community, in the Bitcoin community, people are so. They're, what they call Bitcoin maxis. So if you go to a Bitcoin event, it is kind of like a religion. It's kind of creepy, honestly, the way some people treat it. Like, you can't say anything negative about it, or you're a shill, or they're like, no, Bitcoin solves everything. And it's just like, come on, like, let's be real. Why can't we be honest and say, hey, it has some flaws here, or it could improve here? But that's the problem when things become too cultish. But if you can get rid of that and still say, hey, I just want to learn a little bit about private cryptos like Monero and Zano. But if they fall apart or if the projects become compromised, then just be honest about it. There's no need to become a member of a cult.
For sure.
Well, I think that kind of goes with like MAGA, for example,
It goes with everything, right?
Yeah, with everything. Was there ever a point in your journey that you thought Trump might be able to turn things around?
I did not. You guys could probably pull up an article of mine called, I'll have to think of the title. The Establishment's Plan to Divide. There's this article I wrote in 2016 called The Establishment's Plan to Divide. And it was when Trump first got elected. And I don't think everything I said in there came true. It wasn't necessarily meant to be a prediction. But I definitely believe that Trump's role for the predator class was to come in and to divide the true freedom movement, to kind of co-opt it, including some of that energy that came after Ron Paul, that came after the End the Fed movement, the Tea Party movement, which I think was authentic and then got fractured. And that's not to say, of course, anybody and everybody who believes in the principles of America First or Make America Great Again is a bad person or anything like that. But I definitely think a lot of well-intentioned people got swept up into something. And for me personally, I think it's abundantly clear by this point for anybody who's being honest about, Trump's appointments and the people he's affiliated with. I know some people had a lot of hope the first time. And of course, I know I probably shouldn't have to say it, but I'll just say it because there's always somebody out there like, what, do you think Kamala would have been better? No, I don't think either side would be good. That's not the point, right?
Yeah,
it's that the entire system is controlled, and they're going to keep trying to put out, a little carrot on a stick. Like, for example, I think Thomas Massey's a great guy. If he decides to run for president in a couple of years, cool. But I don't think we should put our energy and efforts into like thinking he's going to come along and save the system. But there will always be, whether by design or just somebody genuine, because there's questions people have even about, was Ron Paul's movement, was that controlled from the beginning? Was that all, a sort of controlled opposition to steer people towards Trump? Like, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know. I do think good people are out there. I'm not black-pilled to think everybody everywhere is evil or anything like that. But these people that have been working on this generations old conspiracy, this agenda, absolutely do plan for multiple, scenarios. And I just don't think the way we win is through the political system. I think they've had that controlled for far too long, and I always kind of find myself asking myself, like, how can people on one hand look at things like Jeffrey Epstein or satanic cults, which we know are real, and ritual abuse, and see how high up and these things go, and then turn around and think that voting is going to fix things. Like, I don't know. To me, it seems like a disconnect.
A huge disconnect. You couldn't have put it better. Oh man.
And it just continues to grow too. People refuse to accept the things that are put right in their face. And I mean, part of me understands where like that mindset comes from people who do that. I mean, imagine putting all your eggs in this basket. Imagine investing all your time, all your hope, every resource you had in your human body to try to move forward, and then to just read this information that just completely discredits everything you put your time into. And I wish people would just, instead of just shutting down and, turning into, that cult person we talk about, expand your horizon a little bit. Read about what you found out that you didn't like. And then, ultimately you're just going to be led to a different direction that'll give you some more hope. And, that's how people could find people like you, Derrick.
Yeah. And, I think one big piece there, I will have to be going in just a couple minutes, guys, that I want to share here is that I think it comes down to principles over politics and over personality. If you just keep that in mind, and no matter how charismatic the person is, or how much you like them, or if it's a woman, how attractive they are, all these kind of silly things that our human mind does attach to, because whether people want to admit it or not, a lot of people, they attached to Trump as a personality. Like, so when he's out there and he's saying something funny and sticking it to the mainstream media, it feels like I did that. He's speaking for me. Yeah. People start to identify and personalize with these characters, whether you're talking about Trump or any other person before him or after him. And then when somebody like I or one of you guys comes along and says, yeah, but what about X, Y, and Z? Don't you see all these different things? They feel personally attacked. They might turn around and say, no, you're just an idiot. You can't see what's really, they attack you for pointing out the truth, and it's because they've come to personalize and to identify with that person. There's nothing wrong with having heroes or inspirations or being, anything like that. But if it comes to the point where you are unwilling to question that person, just like we were saying with the Bitcoin thing, or with any sort of thing, where you put that personality or that party in terms of politics above and over and in front of your principles, that's where the problem is. And of course, I think the bigger root of that problem is that most people don't even know what their principles are. Most people are either overworked, tired, and this is of course all by design. There's probably people listening to this who've been, working 60 hours a week, and they just got home and all they want to do is relax and drink a beer or smoke a joint or relax and listen to a cool podcast. That's going to tell them things they already know, because we like to have our biases and our beliefs affirmed. And then once something kind of challenges or says something out of the norm, some people, they have that cognitive dissonance that shuts them down and says, no, I don't want to hear this anymore. Those people sold out because now they're criticizing this person or this thing that I believe in so deeply. But if you are rooted in your principles and not about party politics or personality, then you can go back to those principles and say, okay, you know what? I did believe in Trump, or I did believe in Bitcoin, but now I'm seeing these following actions that don't seem to align with what I thought this person or this thing was about. Let me step back and do some research and think, okay, he's saying this and he's doing the opposite. That doesn't align with my values. That doesn't align with what I thought MAGA was or what America First was. So then keep the principle and abandon the person, abandon the party. Don't abandon principle in order to keep the person.
Yeah, and I think another point that can be made too is, if you're a person out here new to the hunt for truth and you're really trying to find answers, you really don't understand anything right now. I think the biggest thing the average person can do is to just really become okay with being uncomfortable, because you're going to come up, you're going to find a lot of things that make you very uncomfortable and make you question every aspect of what you were taught growing up. And as we get deeper and deeper into this mess that we're all in right now, you got to be uncomfortable being uncomfortable. If you're not, you're gonna burn out really fast.
It's okay to be wrong, Yeah,
exactly. It's okay not to know. That's something we preach every single episode on this show.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that, because that's kind of what I was saying earlier too, is I think that too many of us, we want to, and I think we can all be guilty of it at different points. Like I said earlier, I've been at this 16 years. I'm sure some things that I was so confident of in the first few years of my work, I could look back and be, yeah, I was wrong then, or I wasn't, I didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle, even if I was generally had the right sentiment, right? And again, to me, truth matters. It is so much that we need to be willing to be honest when we're wrong. We need to be willing to say, I just don't know. You know what? I honestly can't tell you what's what, because unfortunately, if there's definitely a dozen or more reports on my website over the years where I'm having to debunk the so-called alternative media, because there's memes or there's stories that are just circulating that everybody's repeating and everybody's so certain of, but then you go look at it and the facts don't actually line up to what
Doesn't
is
that
being
piss you
reported.
off more than anything else?
Dude, it pisses me off deeply
it's such
because
a discredit on this entire movement.
Exactly. It makes us look bad, but also as some, not to get too deep into it, but when I see those people out there, we could name names of people who've got millions of followers and they post things that are just demonstrably false. And there's somebody like me who, I'm happy with the numbers and the reach I've had and all the people I've met. I'm not complaining about this. I'm not making it about myself, but for somebody who's been working at this for 16 years, and I am very meticulous with my work, like I said, with the Pyramid of Power and what I put my name on. And then I see other people who just couldn't give a shit about being truthful or being honest, and they're probably racking up big bucks with millions of views because they want clickbait, because clickbait sells and rage bait sells and things like that. Division sells. But you know what? Regardless, I'm grateful to count people like yourself as colleagues who are truly after the truth and care about that. And I think if we all do that, if we all can stay humble and are striving for the truth and knowing that, hey, we're capable of being wrong. We don't know everything. We may never know everything. In fact, I kind of came to peace with myself early in this journey of like, there's never going to come a moment, as far as I can see, where there's going to be this grand reveal. I know a lot of people want that and wish that, because I imagine this moment of like, I'm on my deathbed and then, the New World Order kidnaps me and they're like, all right, Derrick, before we kill you and black bag you, here's the grand truth of everything. It's like, that's probably not going to come.
You were this close, Derrick.
You almost had it all figured out. Oh, your Pyramid of Power is so close. But if that's not going to happen, then we have to come to peace with like, okay, I'm probably never going to know it all. I'm probably never going to be able to figure this out at all, like the full, context of it. So then why not just remain humble about that, be honest about that? There's things that we don't know. There's things that we can't know. There's things that are just not available to us, and remain humble in your search for truth. I mean, that's all I'm trying to do. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come here and speak with your audience. And I'd love to come back sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff
on,
that anytime. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be dug into, and I think there's like a few very long form episodes, if you've got the time, that we should definitely get out there to our audience and introduce more people to you.
Let's do it in the new year, guys. I'd be happy to.
Awesome,
Hell yeah.
brother. Derrick, thank you so much for coming on, man. I know you got to bounce.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, you're one of the OGs. People need to follow you. I know we went over a couple of your sites, but is there anywhere in particular you'd like people to go and maybe where they can support you? Do you do any like weekly streams or anything like that?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank both, all three of you guys for the time and for giving me a platform here. Yeah, my main website is theconsciousresistance.com. If whatever social media you're on, you can either just find me, my name, Derrick Broze. Obviously, I'm on X at dbroze, live free there, or search The Conscious Resistance. I am on Instagram, TikTok, Odyssey, BitChute. A whole bunch of others. If you search The Conscious Resistance or my name, you'll find me. I do a live podcast every Monday called The Conscious Resistance Live, which is about an hour, 2 hours long. And then I release clips out of that throughout the week. I do interviews. Again, I try to focus on solutions. The final episode of The Pyramid of Power is coming up. You guys can find that at thepyramidofpower.net. Let me see what else I'd like to mention. If anybody wants to learn more about solutions, I put on an event every January in Mexico. It's also live to stream for free online. It's called the People's Reset. We originally launched it in the middle of COVID, kind of as a response to the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. And so we meet every January. When they're meeting in Davos, Switzerland, we're meeting for 5 days to talk about grassroots bottom-up solutions. The website for that is thepeoplesreset.org. And as I said, you can watch for free online, and it's 5 days of solutions: growing food, building independent communities, decentralized tech, all of it. You can find it there at thepeoplesreset.org, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man, and outside of this, reach out to us about that, this Mexico thing, because we're a pretty good production company, and we'd probably love to give you a hand with bringing that to the world in the best possible
That would
quality.
be great. I would love to talk to you about that. Absolutely.
So thanks again for coming on, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in and spent their evening with us. I mean, it's all of us as a collective that can come together and physically change these things. It's the force. It's that humble nature that Derrick mentioned. It's that humanity touch that's been lost. Make sure that you're out there. Make sure that you're being a friendly person. Make sure that you care about your fellow man. Don't buy into bullshit trends that you see on social media. Touch grass, as they say. Go out there, talk to your fellow neighbor. And I think if you do that every single day, at least for an hour, at least a few interactions a day, you'll come to the realization that everyone at this group here has. What you're told is not true, and you have a lot more in common with your neighbor than you ever realize. So just go out there and be a good freaking human being. That's all there is to it. So with that being said, we are Isaac's Army. We want answers. This is the return of Cappy. So for Derrick, Broze, Dave, and John, I'm Big Sean. Take care of yourself and each other, and be sure to stay abreast to the war that we're all in, because it will never be over, and we're going to fight it to the last day. So take care, guys. We'll see you soon.
Peace out.
Peace out.